Well, you may be one of the many Canadians that we're hearing from having to use credit cards to pay for things more and more often right now with the cost of everything going up. Well, the price of using that credit card, it too is about to go up. As of today, businesses across most of the country can pass the credit card fees they pay onto their customers. Megan Fitzpatrick is on the story for us to explain this rule change in effect everywhere except Quebec and what it could mean for consumers. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning, Heather. Yeah, some people might not be aware that when they use their credit card to buy a coffee or a couch or a new shirt, that the business owner has been covering the cost that the credit card companies charge for the use of that card. Until now, the business owner had to absorb that fee. It's called an interchange fee. They were not allowed to pass it on directly to the consumers. Now, some business owners not very happy about that, and there was a class action lawsuit that was launched several years ago. And then there was a settlement, and as a result of that settlement between the complainants and the credit card companies, that's why we're seeing these rule changes go into effect today. So as you mentioned, as of today, businesses will have the option of adding a surcharge basically to someone's bill to recoup that cost that they're charged by the credit card companies. Now, these fees can range from 1% neighborhood up to 3%, depending on the credit card. The credit cards with all those rewards and points and benefits, they're more expensive to use. So it's not clear exactly what these fees might be. They could be different depending on what the business owner decides to do. But there will be an absolute cap of 2.4%. Also, customers have to be notified about this. So if the business does impose this surcharge, they have to publicize it, and it will be on your receipt. So a number of rules governing these new agreements basically between credit card companies and businesses, but the consumers should watch out for it. If they are seeing a surcharge on their receipt from a business, that's why, Heather.
So we are getting all sorts of really interesting viewer responses to this, Megan, and it ties in with what I want to ask you next. Dawn, for example, writes me this. Personally, I won't use a business if I have a choice that charges a surcharge to use my credit card. So if companies have the option, will they, given the sentiment of people like Dawn?
Yeah, well, some of those businesses might argue it's the consumer's choice to use that credit card. No one's forcing them to use it. They could use a debit card. They could use cash. Part of the argument was, why should the business cover the cost of a consumer choosing to use a credit card that they get benefits from? And these days, a lot of small businesses like those on this street where we are in Toronto, a lot of independent businesses around here, they've been struggling through the pandemic, of course. Some restaurant owners we've been talking to, they say their margins are already razor thin. And so being able to pass this cost on to their customers could really help. Here's what one restaurant owner that CBC talked to said about this.
We're really at a point of razor thin margins, and 2% could matter, it could make a difference. So I'm not against it in any way. I think it's probably a natural progression that the consumer is given the option and makes an informed opinion and pays the price themselves. So I think it's extremely timely.
And the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Heather, they surveyed some of their members earlier this fall. The results of that poll showed that about 1 in 5 of the businesses they talked to said they do intend to start imposing this surcharge. Others might just encourage their customers to use other forms of payment that aren't as expensive. I've been talking to a couple of consumers around here in this neighborhood this morning. Here's what one of them told me.
At the end of the day, it's a fee that banks charge to merchants, and most people don't know. So I think it's only fair for merchants to just pass that on to clients. I just think that it's an interchange fee that should not be charged.
So we'll see if this does change consumer behavior, Heather. As we know, during the pandemic, there was a huge shift towards using cards instead of cash, be they debit cards or credit cards. But we'll see if consumers might make the shift back to cash if they're not willing to pay these fees.